for all y'all that remember, that for our regular listeners here will remember Trilly. Sometimes we call him Trilly. He committed to coming on this endurance paddle trip that we've got lined up, 137 miles. And he said if we get him a boat, he would be there. And now he's refusing to go on it now. Really, why are you, I do want to know, why are you refusing to go on the trip?
It's very similar to mountain biking. Paddling is.
Have you ever done anything like this before?
I have paddled in a boat, but not at all like that. I mean, I haven't done 137. You haven't either done 137 miles.
He ain't trying to back out either.
That's the adventure of it, though.
You know what? I'm not trying to back out either because I never actually committed.
It's on the podcast recorded.
Who thought, anybody listening, did you think I was being serious? I'm a jokester. I'm a joker. I mean, that's why they call it.
Well,
I'm Trilly. I'm a joker.
If you want
that
to
wasn't
discredit
serious.
sin and call it joking, if you want, I mean, just say it. I'm a liar. Just say that. I mean,
I didn't lie.
You said you was going to do something. Now you said you ain't. That's lying in its purest form.
From the very beginning, I said, nope, I ain't doing that. Chad was like, well, don't you think this paddle trip's a good idea? I said, no. Sounds awful.
I was counting on you to catch an alligator. I think you might be the one that's crazy enough to catch a live alligator.
Well,
so that we could eat it for dinner one night.
You're going to have to do it now.
Well, hey.
Y'all going to go hungry then.
I don't know
what to rely on that.
I don't know what to say. I think it's going to be a grand adventure.
Oh, y'all going to have fun.
I think it's going to be challenging. I can't believe you're not going.
Y'all are going to have lots of fun.
Well, guys, welcome back to the 3 of 7 podcast. We're going to talk about today, well, I don't know what we'll end up talking about. What's on my mind is what it means to be full, whole, and healthy, because I was asked that question. And so we'll dig into that in just a little bit. I want to thank you guys so much for sharing the podcast. Well, first for listening. The rest of you guys that have decided to share the podcast, I want to thank you for that because it helps us tremendously grow the show, and that's what the show has to grow if we're going to do it, because it takes a lot of time to put the podcast on, and we at least like to see it pay for itself. So we appreciate you guys that do share the show, and we especially appreciate you guys that support us on Patreon. It means a lot. We love the community that we have over on Patreon. And eventually, we'll be transitioning a lot of those members. Hopefully, come over to the app that we have in the works right now. I got a lot of cool ideas for the app. I can't wait to see that thing come alive. But of course, I want to read a review that someone left us on the iTunes podcast thing here on the iPhone. These reviews, you guys asking me, I'm sure a lot of you guys are wondering why I asked you to leave the show a review on iTunes, and a lot of you guys have done it. And it's because it helps bump the show up in the rankings. And it gives the show credibility, too, for people that are looking for whatever, a fitness or Christ-centered podcast, whatever you want to call the 3 of 7 podcast. So here's a review. I haven't even read it yet. This is a brand new one from Jimmy, Gemme 5. Jimmy 5. Thanks for leaving this, brother. The message coming from this podcast is like a voice crying in the wilderness. I am so grateful to have found 3 of 7 podcast, and I've been listening for over a year now. That's awesome, man. There's no one else in this wild world of podcasting except Chad, Chili, Blake, and PN. That's Pastor Nathan for you guys that haven't met PN, who consistently let drop solid, accurate, and often uncomfortable truth bombs. These podcast conversations disrupt comfort and apathy, challenge fears and facades, and are usually delivered with a mixture of humility and humorous bravado that always entertains, and sometimes it makes me want to bang their heads together. Subscribe, you won't be disappointed. Jimmy, that's a really in-depth review, man. And brother, I just want to thank you for writing that to us. It encourages me greatly, and I think the whole team here is encouraged by those statements. It means a lot for us to be able to see that the show's actually making an impact and making a difference in people's lives. So just wanted to say thanks. Well, yeah, so I was asked today by me and Brooke, we do marriage counseling. So we go see our man Jeremy down here in town, and a lot of times there's not an agenda. A lot of times we just sit down and talk about whatever comes up. And it's not always just about marriage. So Jeremy, we'll have him on the show here probably within the next few weeks. I talked to him about it today, but he's a really sharp guy. But he asked me a question as Brooke and I were trying to assess where we were in life of if you could put a percentage on your life, where you are in life, as far as a percentage on your capacity, as far as your potential goes, maybe, or how you're feeling about your life. What's the percentage from 0 to 100? And then, of course, we were like, well, what are you using? Like, what wickets are you looking at? Aspects of your life are you looking at to be able to determine that number? And he said, well, the three that I've always thought of is, are you full? How full are you? How healthy are you? And how whole are you? And I thought, well, that's interesting. I have an idea what my life would look like to be full, healthy, and whole. Maybe I don't have a picture of what that would look like at 100%, but I think I know what the best case scenario would be. But you break that down and you ask yourself, what percentage are you at when it comes to being full, healthy, and whole? And I think if you make an honest assessment with yourself, you may not be operating at the percentage that you want to be. And for me, just today, I said, well, I feel like I'm at about 60%. And I think that caught them off guard. Like, dang, only 60%? If you're taking all those things into account? So what do you need to do to raise that? And what do you guys think? Where would you be?
Well, I mean, that's a pretty big question. So
Brooke couldn't answer it either. For some reason, it was easy. It was an easy question for me to answer.
I don't like putting percentages on things.
Well, that's just because you're lame.
Well, I am very.
So you're saying you're operating at 60% of your potential or capabilities? Is that
no, just the complete. If I looked at the completeness of my life, how full am I? How healthy am I? And how do I feel whole? Like wholeness being all aspects of my life, really being complete. You know what I mean?
Like, so of the red, if you go 40% more, you'll be redlining. Or
no, if I
don't get the 60%.
I don't get it either.
So 100% would be like you're completely satisfied, satiated,
content
in a good way, right? With like all aspects of your life. So, all right. So
if I think I'm stretched a little thin in everything that I'm doing. So I think that I don't know how you figure the percentage, but I think me as one person am stretched thin in everything that I do. I feel like I probably don't give enough time to any one thing because I'm giving too much time to a bunch of different things. I don't know how to put a percentage on it or think of it in a different way, but that's just what I think.
Well, percentages, I think that percentage changes for me on the daily, and I think it could even shift within a day. But the first thing that I wanted to talk about is that fullness. Like, what does that actually mean? And what's going on, man? Blake's messed up the podcast machine here.
You paired your phone to it, getting all your alerts.
What were the three aspects?
Full, healthy,
and complete.
and whole. Yeah.
Full, healthy, and whole. Okay.
Yeah. And I don't know, man. It just really resonated with me. It may not resonate with you guys at all, but when I put myself at 60%, the reason I don't feel like I'm really, say, 90% full, healthy, and whole, one of the big issues for me is in that category of fullness. And I have a clear picture of what that means to me. What that means to me is how much am I giving versus how much am I receiving or doing for myself. And so that's one of the categories that Blake called it stretch thin. That's one of the categories, that fullness, that keeps me from rating myself at a higher percentage of essentially completeness. Because it seems as if what I do specifically within the Body of 3 of 7 project, it requires me to give a lot of myself mentally and emotionally directly to other people. So like everything that I do is, whether it's a speaking engagement, whether that's online or virtual, whether it's in instructing, whether it's just taking a phone call, it seems like everyone I'm around or talking to from outside people, right? I'm there to talk to them or to give something to them, or they want something from me. Whether it's a story or a principle or advice or whatever it is. So that's where I feel the deficit. And I feel like I'm always giving of myself, which is a wonderful gift to be able to have something that other people value, right? Like how awesome is it that people want to hire you to come and teach them or speak to them, right? But that takes a lot out of me, and I don't feel like I recoup what I give. I don't feel like I make the investment back into myself on a regular basis to recoup that, whether it's doing something for myself or it's receiving something from somebody else that's going to help fill me up.
Well, what fills you up?
And make me full.
But what?
So that's a good question. In my mind, when do I feel the most full? Is like hunting is a big one. Like taking time, like a block of time because that's so, for me, I love it so much. And it's time for me where nobody else is bothering me and I'm so honed in and focused. So hunting is one. I think for me, the paddling trip, that's what that is for me. It's an opportunity for me to fill myself back up. I think in some ways running does that for me, but I think running does it on a very small level. Like running has just become what I do. You know what I mean? Yeah. It doesn't necessarily fill me back up anymore. So I need to come up with that. Like, what are the things that fill me up? I mean, the top of the list, the first thing that comes to my head is during hunting season, man. During deer season, when times that I get selfish and I'm doing what I want to do with no other agenda and literally not caring what other people outside of that activity want from me.
Yeah.
I can literally just say, I don't care. I'm doing this for me because it's what I love to do. I need to come up with more things like that, man.
Well, what do other people do for you that fill you up? I mean, is there things that people say or do to you or for you that fill you up, so to speak?
Well, that's something too that when I think about recouping that energy, that lost energy, or when I get a little low myself, it's usually the way that I think about recuperating that is doing things for myself. It's as far as what other people do for me to fill me up. That's a really hard dynamic for me, man, because anytime I'm engaging another person, it's almost like it's either detracting from my fullness or it's just good conversation, but it's not really filling me up. I'm staying pretty level. It may be contributing to my knowledge or helping me identify ways to get better.
But like Brooke, is there anything, there's nothing she does for you that just like fills you up more? Like that you appreciate more? Like I think of, for me, like if I'm just tired of doing something and somebody comes along and just tells me that like either they appreciate it or how it has made a difference for them or how it's helping them, then I'm like, oh man, I'm burnt out on it doing this, but I could do it for another however long now, because now I see the difference that it's making and they've told me that. So like I'm not seeking out encouragement from anybody, but I'm just saying like words, people telling me that something has made a difference or that I'm doing a good job, that fills me up.
That does help me too. Like that review that we just read.
Yeah.
From Jimmy. Like, yeah, that does help fill me up. So that's a good point, man.
But and it's different for everybody. Like for some people, it's like maybe it's like they appreciate like a gift. Like, we talked to Stephanie and she's like, the gift that you receive, it's just like the thought of it. Just say, hey, here's this I got for you. I appreciate you. And people appreciate that much more than they do like just a thank you or, hey, this is making a difference. But
to me, this is an impossible conversation to have if you don't define what fullness is and then later what wholeness is and what healthy is. Like full, I mean, you kind of said what you think of it as, and maybe that's just I'm having a hard time with it because I kind of view it a little different. But what y'all are talking about is more to me like how you recharge, like whether you're introverted or extroverted. Like Chad basically talks about how when he goes and meets all those people, they always want something from him or something, and it's kind of draining.
And that's like, very unnatural for me to be in that situation.
Like it drains him. And then like if he could just go and stay in the woods and hunt for a couple weeks or months or forever, he would feel recharged,
Yeah.
And then could go back out. He still may not want to if it's not his personality, but then could go back out and have that done from him. Okay, his battery's low again, so he goes back and can hunt for a while, and then,
that's the way I feel himself
back up.
So, but like to call that fullness in the way you framed it initially. See, I didn't hear what's his name, Jeremy.
Yeah,
how he framed it, but it almost sounds like that fullness would be you could actually be full of with life or the aspects of life and be drained. Like
maybe it's fulfilled.
I think that's really how I picture it, and maybe that's just a difference in how we're perceiving it. But like I'm the same way as you. I'm exhausted after that 2-week trip we took and all the interactions we had and everything. But at the same time, I was full in the way that I'm thinking of it. Because of all those interactions, like they were positive, I think people made a difference in my attitude about things. Hopefully we made a difference in people's lives. I think God was using us to make an impact, so in that way I was full, but I was exhausted. Like I wanted time to myself. Yeah. I don't know. I think there's different things, but part of that's just how you define certain things. I don't know. But if you're looking at fullness in terms of just your ability like your energy levels almost.
It's almost a selfish thing. Like when I say full, when I'm full, I'm more willing to contribute to other people. Like we did on our trip out west.
That sounds to me though like what does not being full look like? I picture lacking something. So maybe it is lacking the ability to give somebody your full self.
That's what not being full looks like to me.
I don't know.
It looks like to me an unwillingness to pour into other people. That's when I know that like I'm not full. So like that's how I gauge it.
I'll give you an example of this. Just the other day, Kat was doing whatever with Blakely, and me and Joe were home, and I turn on the Disney Channel. She's snacking, so we're just going to watch a show or whatever. And when I'm looking through there, they've got these categories of movies that you can watch or browse or whatever. And so one of them is just for like it's inspired by black people. That's the category. The other one is for female leaders. There's one that's short films, and it's for it's for the lesbian and gays in that short. And so they've got all these different, and it aggravated me because that's so easily accessible to the kids. And then also, I mean, just that's a whole nother rabbit hole. But anyways, I got aggravated with it, and at that point, I wasn't full in that moment because I couldn't have went and poured into someone else because that aggravated me. But just a couple hours later, Hal messaged me something about something that Justin shared with him that impacted him and how he got to share that with the people in his community at his hometown and just how God worked in that and how 3 of 7 was a part of it, how I was a part of it. And that filled me back up, and I could have immediately went and shared that good news and helped someone else out. So that's on a micro level. I think there's there's certainly bigger times like for you where you're drained because of this long weekend, but even in day-to-day things, you let little things aggravate you and detract from that, then you're not able to pour into someone else because you're letting that thing aggravate you, and you're not going to give your full self to someone else to help them or benefit them.
Well, when you say the term pour into, it makes me think of a cup, which is often used in the Bible as a symbol, like, yeah, and like what I thought of initially, as soon as I heard this, is lacking something if you're not full. Well, yeah, like your cup is halfway full, you are lacking the rest of the way, and then you can't pour into people like you would if it was full. I mean, yeah. I don't know.
This is something I need to work on, and through this conversation, I'm going to tell you in Scripture how this came to me here in just a second. But through this conversation, I'm realizing that we should each identify what it is. The question Blake asked me initially, what is it that fills you up? Because like Blake receiving that message from Hal, as awesome as that is, it wouldn't have filled me up. Mm-hmm. It would have encouraged me that what we are doing is the right thing to do. And maybe it would have, probably, I say it wouldn't have filled me up. It would have put something extra in my tank. Yeah. So it would have raised my tank level a little bit. But it ain't gonna raise my tank level like a week in the deer stand hunting deer. So it's like that's something I think that's important for all of us. And Jesus, in my mind, he knew when he needed to fill himself up. And just in a short few pages here in Matthew, and I'm speaking here on such a small scale to what Jesus experienced during his ministry, but there are so many points here just in a few pages in the book of Matthew where it says Jesus sent the multitudes away. Mm-hmm. He sent them away, and he departed into some quiet place or some wilderness. Here's one right here in Matthew chapter 14, verse 13. When Jesus heard of it, speaking of the beheading of John the Baptist, when Jesus heard of it, he departed by a ship into a deserted place apart. And when the people heard of it, they followed him. But it goes on to say he was moved with compassion towards them. And once they followed him, and he then turned to heal their sick and speak to them. But once he was done, he turned away. He sent the multitudes away and departed into a quiet place. It's like he had the perfect picture of being full, being whole, being healthy, being complete, right? And so in his ministry, I think there are certain moments in time where we can say, Jesus had this multitude in front of him. Why didn't he just stay there 24/7, healing the sick, preaching the gospel, sharing these parables with them, teaching them? Like, why did he ever stop? It was because, like, there were certain points where I assume he said, okay, I need to, you guys need to go away. I need to go out here into the woods and spend some time with my Creator. With Jesus was God, but
with my Father.
Yeah, with my Father. Yeah.
The Father.
The Father. Yeah. Filling myself back up.
Yeah.
So like for me, finding that balance of when is the time for me to say, hey guys, I gotta send the multitudes, whatever the multitude is for us, it may just be a few people. I gotta say no. I gotta send them away, and I gotta retreat to a deserted place.
Yeah, I mean,
and fill myself back up. You know what I mean?
Me and all of my metaphors, I think like a rechargeable battery, right? You put it in a flashlight, and it does its job until it's out, and then it can stay with the flashlight, but it's of no use to it anymore, and it has to be taken out and returned to the charger and filled back up. And then it can go back and do its job again with the flashlight. Whereas the flashlight is the people or the audience you're speaking to. You're the battery. And the charger would be God. You know, if I digest that story I just told, really the message Hal shared with me, it helped me. But what helped me was that I saw the evidence of God working and using us. And that is what encouraged me to say, you know, If I don't like what was draining me, then I need to do what I'm doing now and do good to change that so that it's not an issue anymore.
Yeah.
So,
and I don't know if any of you guys listening struggle with this, or if you guys are listening and you've identified the things that fill you up, shoot us a message and let us know what that is, because I want to hear how people recharge and how it's different for everybody. And have you ever had a problem in business, if you're an entrepreneur or a business owner, saying no to opportunities because you simply feel like you're not in if you feel like you're not in a place where you can give the best of yourself to your team members, to the people that are seeking something from you? Have you had a problem saying no to those opportunities? I have. It's almost like, to me, this entrepreneurship, this business, this ministry, whatever you call it, it's almost like, we'll use another metaphor, like the river we're going to go paddle. The easiest route is just to keep saying yes and go with the flow. That always seems like the easiest route. The river's flowing in a certain direction, and you just keep saying yes, and you just keep going with that flow. But, you know, I think in a sense, it's good to back up at some times and say, well, what about the quality versus the quantity? Yes, I can say yes next year to 50 speaking engagements, and we can make a whole lot of money. But am I going to be full enough running on that schedule, saying yes to that many things, to be able to deliver the quality that I believe, the quality, the standard that I want to uphold?
well, that's what would distract from you. live up to the standard you have set for yourself, and that's going to further.
And so then there's no longevity in that.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm guilty of it, man. I'm guilty of, even when I feel like, man, should I travel and go do this engagement or this thing? Man, it's going to really help the business out. Should I do it? I'm guilty of always saying, yes, let's do it. It means whether it's a significant amount of money or impact or opportunity. When I think there are times, and there will be times in the future, where I should recognize the fact that, man, I don't feel very full right now. I don't feel very willing to go and perform this task or hold the standard and give the quality that people expect. So I just need to back off and go somewhere to fill myself up. I need to turn the multitudes away, in a sense, as we speak to Scripture, and go and recharge myself, man.
Well, and it's just as much your team's job to identify what fills you up as it is yours, because sometimes it's hard for us to identify that. And if you do, and you say, hey, this is what I like, this is what helps me, if your team hasn't identified that yet, then they're not going to be filling you up, because even if you tell them, they don't really understand it. So, I mean, there's a book. It's kind of, I mean, it's all right. Some people like it, some don't. But it's about love languages, and essentially it just says that everybody receives love and feels appreciated in different ways. Like some people it's through words, some's through gifts, some is through affection. So it's all different, but it goes beyond like your spouse. It could be with your teammate. It could be with your kids, be with people at work. Like what fills them up is essentially what the book talks about, and how people receive it in different ways. So identifying that within your team, within your family, whoever you're working with or around, is just as much your responsibility as it is them to identify their own. So what I'm saying is, I mean, I know you like to be alone, but aside from that, if I sat and thought about it, I could probably figure it out, but I've never really considered it. So that is something that I can do to help the team out better. Then it's the whole burden's not on you to figure that out for yourself, you know?
I think the other dynamic of that too, Blake, yes, we can help each other better in that way by identifying that in each other. I think the other dynamic as a team and in business that you have to decide at certain points is like, is this the right time to continue growing?
Yeah.
And I had this conversation with you yesterday, and I said, man, we'll make enough money this month that we legitimately, financially, we could ride out the rest of the year.
Oh, you didn't think about taxes.
Well, maybe the last 2 months, we've made enough money that we could ride out the rest of the year and really just have no obligations if we didn't want to. And guys, when I say that, I want you to understand, we're not banking millions of bucks over here. We're saying we could ride out the rest of the year with our lifestyles, living the way that we live, and sustaining that, right?
You can't answer that question of, should I go do this speaking engagement? Should we continue to grow in this rate without having your goals in the frame? Like, should you go do this speaking engagement? Well, what's your overall goal? I mean, if you've like already met the goal, well then no. But if you haven't and it's going to help you get there and you're able to perform the task, then yes, you should. I mean, like, to me, that's just a funny question to ask if you don't have a specific goal in mind. Like should I do X, Y, or Z? Well, what's the point? I mean, what are you trying to achieve? You have to know what you're trying to accomplish to know if you should do it or not.
Well, yeah, I mean, I get that, but I feel like that's a very vague thing in the business that we're in, because you asked me what my goal is
No, it may be vague, but it doesn't have to be. You could have a very specific goal.
Yeah, I guess you could.
I mean, maybe
But we don't have that.
Yeah, I mean,
Well, it depends on how specific you want to get with the goal, but the overall goal is to change people's lives and point them to Jesus, and that will never be fulfilled. So
That's
goal
it.
is never achieved. So you have to measure that and say, can I achieve the standard by what I don't want to say feeling, but how I
you're
am right
agreeing
now?
with me.
Can I achieve
Yeah.
that standard by doing this engagement? But the goal's never filled. It's
well,
just
but
That's the hard part, because it's like with the business we're in, it's not like, okay, my goal is to sell $1 million of real estate this year. And once you hit that goal, you say, okay, I hit it. I'm good, right? But since the goal that we've set, at least in the ministry aspect of it, we don't have any financial goals really. I mean, none. So like the ministry aspect of what drives us, it is just the perpetual thing that you're going to be trying to build upon throughout your entire life.
Well, play that out. Okay, the goal is to share Jesus with people. I mean, just that's probably the simplest way to put it. Okay, we've got a speaking engagement that we could either do or not do. Will this help us, give us that opportunity? Almost every time the answer is going to be yes to that. So then, are you able to do it and not have so much taken from you that we're going to miss the next opportunity or the next one? And like you talked about longevity, I think that's just how you have to frame it every time.
Yeah.
It can be vague goal kind of. I mean, that's not really vague. It's just hard to actually accomplish.
well,
like,
you can never.
There's no
accomplish it.
limit
Yeah.
on,
Yeah,
but-
that's what makes it tough, because when you talk about sharing, like traveling around and sharing the gospel, it's like every opportunity that comes up, could I go do it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so what's maximizing it?
What's maximizing it? Yeah. What is that? What is that? Yeah. That's the tough part. And that's the part where at some point I got to figure that out and at least put some structure. My life right now, as far as like scheduling or this recharging aspect of life that we're talking about, there's really no structure to it. There isn't, man. And I'm not a structure person. Like I would go crazy if I lived by like a hour by hour schedule. Like I don't want that, but I think there needs to be at some point a structure to all of our lives where we say, okay, we got this projection here. This is going to be a big push. So let's schedule this period afterward to recharge and fill ourselves back up, doing whatever we've identified that looks like for us each individually. Right?
I think me and Blake are more schedule oriented than you, or structure oriented. Wouldn't you say?
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, for sure. So, yeah, I don't think that part is hard for us.
Well, that's another aspect that I'm totally opposite of you. Is it for me? It recharges me to be around people. Now, I don't like to be up front and center and all eyes on me, but being around like a crowd or people, I enjoy it. I just like to sit around and listen, but it's not that I don't like crowds. I just don't like to be the one entertaining and speaking to all the crowd. But I like to be amongst them and around people, and it recharges me. If you were to say, "Hey, you got 2 months, you've got to go be by yourself," I'd come back so drained and frazzled. I'd just be like, no use. Let me be around some people.
I was just thinking that same thing as it pertains to this conversation. There's got to be people that are listening to this that are saying, "Chad, what are you talking about? Like, it doesn't fill you up to be able to go and be around people and share and instruct and all the things that I do."
Well, it drains you.
This is so unique for each person.
Yeah.
And by no means do I ever want to sound like I'm so thankful that I have the opportunity to do these things. But it's interesting too, I think, how I think Jesus calls us a lot of times to purposes within the body of Christ that are outside of what we're comfortable with.
Yeah.
Right? He calls us to a purpose that he knows is going to significantly stretch our ability to rely upon ourselves and to stay full, right? Because inadvertently, what that does, it makes total sense now that I think about it, why he does that. Because it points you back to dependence on him constantly. And this is something I'm struggling with right now. I have to learn this lesson over and over and over again in my life, as I always will, when things get busy and things are growing and I will always revert back to reliance on self. And that's when I go like slap on to E. It don't take long after I revert back to that reliance on myself to hit the bottom of the freaking tank, man, to where I'm just like, I can't do anything. So had to learn that lesson over and over again in life, man.
Well, I
It's
think
crazy.
with me, that's why I don't like calling it full when you talk about getting around other people and it draining you, because like in a way that does fill me up. It's like fulfilling, if you can be around those people. But the way to put it is my energy levels are drained from that.
Yeah.
It's like I am fulfilled by it, but if I'm a battery, I need to be 100% when I go into that situation, because I'm going to be low coming out of it. You know what I mean?
Delayed fulfillment.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think it's two different things. It drains me mentally and my capacity to do anything, but deep down, I appreciate the purpose of it.
It fills your soul but drains your body.
Yeah, that's probably a better way to put it.
Yeah. Well, takeaways from this conversation. Identify. I think take some time. That was a great question Blake asked right off the bat. What is it that fills you up? Whether it's things that you can do for yourself, if that's the way you tick, or things that other people can do for you, right? And I think pass that along to your team members and have that identified in your head. What fills you up? And I think, too, for me, the second takeaway is looking at your future schedule and saying, okay, this is going to be a tough block here. I need to have a plan after this to go and do something that is going to recharge me immediately following this hard push. That way, you're back on your feet and ready to rock and roll after you're done. I would say 3, for me personally, I'm taking a lot of takeaways away from this conversation. This podcast is kind of a therapy session for me. I think 3 is knowing and being okay with when something comes up that I don't feel like I can deliver the maximum quality, the maximum of myself. Being okay with saying, oh, man, we got to say no to that one. We got to say no to that. That's hard for me to do, dude. That's really hard for me to do.
And in our business, essentially that has to be a spirit-led decision, because you can't you can let your feelings play a little bit on it, but it would be easy to let them play too much, and say, I'm pretty drained here, but it could be just the most grand opportunity you have, and you say, I'm not quite full enough, and is there something you can do before, you know what I mean? Like, it would be easy to get caught up in basing that decision off how you feel. And in a sense, you need to, but there is also another aspect to it.
That's right.
Because the devil, who is a real enemy, could play off of that very, very easy.
You're right. You have to be able to make a truly honest assessment.
Yeah.
And I think you have to seek God, like you said, spiritually led through the process of that decision.
Yeah.
You're
I think
right,
it's
man.
a real possibility that you could get back from something, be exhausted, and something else comes up, and you'd be like, "No, man, I'm too tired, don't want to do it." But the answer is you should go do it.
That's a possibility.
I think that is a possibility.
Yeah.
I mean, like you said, it definitely plays a role. If you're beat down, drained, exhausted, to like, hey, maybe we shouldn't go, but sometimes you still maybe should, just depending on.
Because you can get strength from other areas than just recharging yourself. You know, when Jesus went to talk to the Father, he wasn't recharging himself because he was out there on his own away from everybody. He was recharging himself because he connected with God. And so there is supernatural strength that you can draw when there's a supernatural reason that you're there doing something, you know?
Mm-hmm.
But I'm not saying it's not okay to say no. It's okay to say no, but you need to seek higher counsel on that decision than just say, I don't really feel a real fool. I'm not going to say no.
It's probably not okay to say yes or no on your own accord.
Yeah, that's it. That's a good point.
That's a really good point. And I can think of events that we've done in the very recent time frame where I should have really seek God in prayer for the answer either yes or no, because I was in the middle on some of the things we've done recently. But my default is always yes.
Yeah.
There we go, back to the reliance on myself, which is why it always ends me up with an empty tank. So I think that's key, man. I think that's key. Well, maybe on the next podcast we'll talk about what being whole and healthy means. I'm pretty good on the health end, but I feel like I am anyways. And then the wholeness, I think, is what we try to achieve through 3 of 7 project. So maybe we'll hit that on the next podcast. Thank you guys for tuning in. Hope you enjoyed it. Yeah, we'll talk soon. Enough said.